Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Draft Capital, powered by MyBookie. I'm one of the co-hosts here for Draft Capital. Joining me is fellow co-host and president of Off the Ball Network, Chris LeBron. What's up, Chris? How you doing today, brother?
Man, I'm doing really good, Steven. It's good to have you back. Good to get back on Draft Capital, episode 2, right? Episode 2, this is our second episode,
Episode
right?
two, yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's our first real episode. The first one was kind of an intro, but
yeah,
technically,
yeah,
second episode.
you know, uh, can't wait to dive in and talk some NBA draft. No matter what, I feel like the NBA draft is never over. The cycle, it's always to me, it's 365, 24/7. The minute 2021 was over, it was like, all right, 2022, let's dive into these guys. So I'm excited to talk, to chop it up with you, and let's roll, man.
Yeah, let's do it, man. And the title of sorts for this episode is going to be International Men of Mystery. And, as the draft cycle, Chris, that you were just talking about ramps up, you're going to have a lot of people give you their insights and thoughts about certain players. And we could be, just like everyone else who runs terrific shows, not bashing anybody, but you're getting a lot of, the Paulo Banquero, the Chet Holmgren, the Jaden Hardy discussion,
Hmm.
maybe a couple other players sprinkled in there. But today, Chris, we want to zig when everybody else is zagging. We want to talk about some of the most talented and well known big men coming into this year's draft cycle. And Chris, I know when we were discussing this, you were kind of all on board on this too. So, what is it about the international style of play that affects, the way that you scout it, the way you look at it, and how they translate coming into today's NBA?
I always find scouting international players is always, to me, it's like a science because it's obviously we're talking about a different style of game basketball being played. So whenever we hear about some of the top international players, there's always going to be some skepticism about some of these guys because it's like,
Yep.
well, for every Luka Doncic, there's a Dragon Bender
A
and
Jan Vesley or someone
a
like that,
Jan
right?
Vesley. Like more of those guys than there are Lucas. I mean, the Lucas are one in a million, and the Giannis's and all those guys. So to me, that's the fun part is trying to figure out all that and seeing, you know, does it translate? Because like for Luca, I mean, I think Luca changed the whole way we look at international players because the thing was always athleticism, right? And a lot of the international guys may not be, as the athletes we have here in the states. So I think what got people down on Luca was, let's be real, he's not the most athletic person in the world, but we I think we got blinded by the fact that he's been playing in the pros for a long time. All right, so he's around grown men playing basketball, and his skill set is what trumped everything. So forget about the athletic ability. I mean, how many times we see guys who are super athletes that just don't know how to play the game of basketball in the states.
All the
So,
time.
so I think Luca changed the way people look at international players, and to me, that's the fun part is figuring out. All right, can we see this guy translate to the states and all that? So to me, I find I'm always, it's easy to figure out the guys here, playing college basketball and G League and all that, but international scouting international guys and trying to get as much because it's also like it's like a we talked about this before. It's also like sometimes hard to get film on these guys. So
Hmm.
like trying like that mystery. So like I think there's a lot of intrigue in that too. Like trying to like like break a code like because you're like what does anybody have film on this guy like and it's crazy but it's that's science. It's a mystery, like you said, man, a mystery, man. It's just like trying to figure out, do they translate? Does that skill against maybe the level of competition in some of these leagues aren't as great as obviously the NBA and some of the other top leagues in overseas, but trying to figure out, does that skill translate to the NBA game? So to me, that's always fun, trying to figure out, put all the pieces together and see,
Hmm.
which guys you think are going to excel in the pros.
Yeah, and that's a great way to lay that out. And you talk about how film is hard. I mean, it's hard even for NBA organizations really. I mean, look at a Giannis Antetokounmpo. The film that they got from this guy who wasn't even in top tier European style of play, who is reigning Finals MVP for the Milwaukee Bucks now.
Hmm.
If everyone had film on him and everybody, knew everything that we knew today, obviously he goes significantly higher than middle of the first round. But, some of these players, Chris, it was hard to access some film, but, luckily we're friends with a couple other podcasters and writers and things of that nature who were, very much inclined to kind of turn us on to where to get some of these players. And some of these guys went into the draft process last season and had a lot of hype surrounding him, and we'll talk about some of those guys. But Chris, the biggest thing that I like about the international style of play is I think it's more translatable today than it ever has been. I think
Hmm.
with positionless basketball, you really want five guys out there who can dribble, pass, and shoot. That DPS game that I'm going to continue to refer to. Dribble, pass, shoot.
Yep.
It's very important in today's NBA, and so with players like a Manu Ginobili, a Dirk Nowitzki laying the groundwork, the framework for the way that a lot of current NBA players today play, whether it be European or domestic. I think that now it's more easy to translate the European style of play. Not saying
It,
it's easy at all, like in general, but it's easier and it's more translatable than it ever has been.
yes, the game definitely fits these international guys more than it did, just 10 years ago or even 6 years ago. Whatever, like the way, like you mentioned, pos- kind of position is basketball, where you kind of everybody wants ball handlers. You need multiple ball handlers. It's not just the point guard needs to be able to handle the ball. Maybe the shooting guard can have a little dribble. Small forward, like the days of each position you have to be a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward are kind of gone. Like
Hmm.
everyone needs to handle the rock, even the centers. As
Yep.
we've seen, a lot of big men are kind of getting pushed back because they may not be able to handle the ball or shoot. That's why you're seeing guys that some of today's players, 7-footers that are dribbling the ball like guard. I mean, look at Jokic. I
Yeah.
mean, Nikola Jokic. I mean, the MVP. I mean, and he's not an athlete by any. I mean, we might have a better Steven, we might have
I
better
mean,
verts than him. We might, like if I get the knees plus some icy hot, I might have a better vert than Jokic. But he's an elite passer. I mean, he's not just a good passing big. He's a good passer. Period. Like it's
period.
not just period. He's one of the best we've seen. Like he's special and all that, and what he could do, and could be able to shoot from outside. Look at Joel Embiid, could shoot from the outside. Can handle the ball. So
Step
now
backs. Yeah.
yeah, so and we like guys like Jahlil Okafor who are elite footwork, but they just don't possess all the other skills. Is why
Hmm.
you see him getting bounced around. He just got waived, and we don't even know what his NBA career. It might be over.
Hmm.
So we're seeing a new age of basketball, and it fits right into these international guys because a lot of the guys especially in this class,
Hmm.
are tremendous ball handlers and great passers, and that fits right in today's basketball,
Yeah,
especially in the
and
NBA.
yeah, we'll use that as an excellent segue to talk about some of these players, man. And the first one that I want to talk about is a guy that coming into this draft cycle didn't really know much about at all. But I mean, we'll go ahead and dive into him. Hugo Besson, the French
Mhm.
point guard. If I had to look at his style of play and how it compares, he's very much like a hybrid guard. To shout out our guy Rashard Phillips, RP3, the great. Hybrid guard is kind of one of these positions that he talks about where if you compare them into the animal kingdom, they're a king cobra. They're lethal. As soon as they strike you, you just count
Yeah.
down the seconds until you're dead, right? So
Hmm.
a Hugo Besson, he's 20 years old coming out of France, so a little bit older, I think, than what a lot of guys are looking for in today's players. You like them to be in that teens. 20 is now the new 30, Chris. I don't know if you knew this, but
I mean, if you're
he's
21, you're old in the NBA now. So
and look at a guy like Chris Duarte, who I had as a
24,
late
yeah.
first round, late first rounder, and is one of the best scorers for the Indiana Pacers now. But we'll diving back into Hugo Besson here. He's 6'3", about 200 pounds, very much so an NBA style of play. He's averaged 18.6 points per game in St. Quentin basketball last year. Shot about 48% from the floor, almost 36% from deep. Chris, 3 assists per game, and only about 2.5 turnovers per game in about 30 minutes per game. So What was your thought process? How did Hugo pop out on the tape to you, and how do you see him working in today's NBA?
When I watched Hugo play, I saw New York City point guard.
Mm,
It's just his bag, is very New York City esque. That's the first thing that popped up when I first saw him play. I'm like, wow, he reminds me of like Stephon Marbury or Kenny Anderson. Those type of like he just has a tremendous handle. It's very agile and all that. And I think he put his name in the draft last year, and I think he withdrew. But
hmm
he's he's definitely got a lot of skill with the ball in his hand. But with a lot of guys too, he's got to work on his shooting.
Yep.
He's got to work on his shooting, and as most guys, he's still young and all that. But I love his bag. I think he has all the skills to play in the league, might take him a few years, obviously, to develop and all that. But I definitely like his bag a lot. It just gives me that New York City vibe, when I watch him play, and definitely looking forward to watching more of him, see how he progresses, at some solid numbers, but I think he's definitely going to be one of the top guys I'm going to be watching a lot this year.
Yeah, and the bag that you talk about, that's the exact same thing that I have here in my notes. Has an NBA bag, a very solid handle, capable playmaker. He's not going to be one of these guys that's bereft of passing ability. Still can make good passes, but I think his passing opens up because of how dynamic of a scorer he is. Very much an NBA style point guard. I think in today's NBA, where he can run a pick and roll, he would have gravity. I think in today's NBA as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that he's gonna help get guys open, and that's what you want from your point of attack player, and that's what I think Hugo brings. Now, Chris, some of the things that I'm going to be paying attention to, and look, when I'm looking at like weaknesses, it's not that I'm looking, and I know that you're a lot like this too, Chris. It's not that we're looking to tear down a player.
Mm-hmm.
This is just areas where I think we refer to them as weaknesses, right? Because it's just shorter to say, but it's just areas of improvement, right? So when I look at this, like his efficiency isn't terrible, but it's not top notch coming into the season, right? He's not super explosive, could be a more athletic player, but he's like one of these. He kind of has a little bit of an old man game that I keep
Yeah.
referring to, Chris, where the game just kind of happens around him. A lot of his offense is just using his body, and we see this pretty commonly with European style players, right? They're not going to give you those 46-inch verticals, 48-inch verticals, or what have you, but he's going to use his body positioning well. He's not a small guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of falls victim to a little bit of what Ricky Rubio does, right? Where he wants to go for the more pretty play than the simple play. And again, European style of player, is he going to be able to defend well? But the good thing
Yeah.
is, Chris, is what I think is going to help him is that point guards aren't necessarily what they used to be, where you need like that Gary Payton, John Stockton style of point guard,
Mm-hmm.
where you have to be a top notch defender. Now you just got to be serviceable. Look at guys like
Yeah.
Trey Young, players like that. Chris, what do you think about Hugo's areas that he needs to improve on?
I mean, a lot of those stuff you just mentioned. Well, I think what's going to help him, like obviously they're playing it. He's going to be playing obviously New Zealand with the Breakers, but also he's going to be playing with the Yanks. So I think that's going to help a lot. Obviously, like I said, going to have to work on a lot of things defensively and all that. But I think playing with the Yang is going to help a lot of wing, a dynamic wing, and that's someone we'll be talking about a little bit later. But you know, I think that's going to help a lot with his efficiency, his playmaking and all that, and you know guys, there's going to be a lot of international guys that are going to need work, and that's we're going to be talking about that with a lot of these guys. They're going to have to improve like strength. I think that's one thing you're going to see a lot with the international. They're always going to bring up strength,
Yep.
right? And
Physicality of the game.
to me, like I don't see that as a weakness per se. It's just a matter of once you get to the NBA, they'll teach you. I mean, if you go to Giannis scouting, I
Facts.
mean, they probably bring up his strength, right? He needs to get strong. I don't see that as a weakness. Like once you get into the NBA and you get into that workout regimen, look at Giannis now. That's no longer an issue. It's the strength.
hmm
So for him, I think all that stuff will get worked. Just polishing all his skills as a point guard. And I think, like I said, playing with Yang, in the NBL, is playing in a good league in
Yep.
Australia. So I think he's going to be all right. Like I mentioned before, he's one of the top guys I'm going to be watching this year. So I hope he does good with the Breakers.
Yeah, very fascinating style of play. Again, I think it's easily translatable. I think he's a very safe player too. I mean, like worst case scenario, I could look at him as being like a more offensively skilled, like Jose Calderon type player.
That's
You know, where
hey, that's a 15-year vet.
15 year
Jose
vet.
Calderon played what 10, 15 years in the league. A Dragic, type player. Those
Hmm.
guys played in the league for a while. Maybe not as dynamic as Dragic as a scorer, but those guys played in the league a long time. So I could see that with him. He has all the potential to play in the league for a long time. He's, like I said, one of the guys that's been rising for me, and I'm going to be watching a lot of his stuff this year.
Again, 19 points per game in French league. And I mean, he's been a double digit scorer for quite some time now. And again, I think Hugo Besson right now he's my top international player over a guy that I was super high on coming into analyzing overseas play. I know that you have some feelings about Nikola Jovic as well. We'll get right into him. Chris, talk to me a little bit about Nikola Jovic and some of the takeaways that you have on him so far in the early going.
Man, he's one of my favorites, maybe my favorite. He does a little bit of everything. Yeah, what is he, 6'10"?
Yep.
He has all the skills. Can score, can shoot it from the outside. I know the numbers say that he's a little bit inefficient, but I feel like it's just a matter of just working on shot selection and all that. And so I think that'll get better once he gets into the NBA and all that. So it, he, him in transition, he's tremendous in transition in open space as a passer, as a finisher. There's so much to like about him. I just he may be my top international prospect. He's just so good. Like I said, can do a little bit of everything, and had on the under 19s. I mean, I think it was against Japan where he just went off. I think he had
Hmm.
like 35 and 12. I forgot the exact stat line, but he showed out in the under 19s for sure. He had that one highlight play where he dunked on I forgot who they're playing, but the game against Japan I think he had 32, 35, whatever amount of points. He bowled out, just played really good in the under 19. So to me, that's when people started to realize, oh, who's this Jokic guy? He's like, no, it's not, because
Not
people were getting
Jokic.
confused. He's not Jokic. He's definitely not Jokic, as far as body type and all that. But he's so skilled. He could do everything, pass, score. To me, the shoot, his mechanics show
Yeah.
that to me he could be a knockdown shooter in the pro. It's just a matter of just just figuring out shot selection and all that. I think he could be a above 35-36% 3-point shooter in the league. I just think he's very dynamic, and I like him. Some people are low on him. I saw a few
Yeah.
big boards that had him second round. I don't see second round. I see lottery pick rise of right now, maybe even higher
Yeah.
as we get towards, as we continue on with as we get closer to the draft. He's one of my favorites. So I mean, I'm blushing about him because he has everything you want, in a wing, take over ability, everything you want. So I'm very high on Jovic.
Yeah, and again, I was really big on Jovic until I started watching Besson film. And again, second best international player in my opinion, but that's not to say that he's also not extremely talented. I'm with you. I think he could kind of be in that mid first round draft pick area. It
Yeah.
depends on how much, people like tall, wingmen that can shoot. That's kind of the that's kind of the going thing in today's NBA, Chris. And
Mm-hmm.
his height and shooting prospects are what really stuck out to me as well. But I mean, he's 18-year-old guy from Serbia. That combo forward is still very
Serbia,
young.
man, Serbia be putting out some players lately.
Serbia's got some hoopers, man. I mean, if you
They
can
got
ball in the cold, you
hoopers.
can ball anywhere, right? So I
Exactly,
mean,
right? Exactly. Hey, those are guys like, hey, if they could ball in the cold, and it's cold over there. I'm assuming
mhm.
it's very cold in Serbia. It just sounds
Never
cold.
been. I hear it's
I
beautiful. I
never,
mean,
yeah, yeah. It sounds like a cold country. So, but they've been producing some hoopers. So I fully expect them to be that next one.
yeah, and I mean, last season for KK Mega Baymax, he averaged almost 12 points per game. shot about 50, almost 50% from the floor, but that 27% from deep. That's over all the games he played. There were some
Yeah,
leagues
yeah.
that he played in where
He
he
played in like
looked like.
3 or 4 leagues, right? Am I
Exactly,
correct?
yeah,
Like,
and
yeah.
he looks like he could be in some of those leagues. He's about a 40% shooter, and some of them he's
Mhm.
about low 20s. So it really
The
just
ice,
depends.
he ISOs a lot. He
He
does
does.
ISO a lot, and that's something you're not going to be able to do in the pros in the NBA. So I feel like because he's the guy on most of his teams, that he's feeling himself a lot. And a lot of the stuff some of the stuff I was watching, it's like, all right, he checked, he's feeling himself. He's very confident in his game, and
Yep.
that's. But once like I said, he's young.
Yeah,
We see that
it's
a lot, and so all the mechanics show that he can be a plus, a
exactly.
35% plus 3-point shooter. So I'm not too worried about that right now. I think once he gets to the pro NBA, they'll teach him, they'll slow him down, not too much ISO stuff, and learning to use screens and all that. I think he'll be a solid 3-point shooter.
Yeah, and again, these 18-year-old guys coming into teams, you don't really look their efficiency as a finished product. I mean, these guys are still
Yeah,
learning. They're playing against grown men in all these
exactly.
other leagues, right? So I
Exactly. They're not a finished product. Like to
nope.
me, like and you've seen this a lot. I've seen this a lot where they're like, oh, he can't shoot to three. He shoots like 20. If you just look at the percentage, you're like, oh, he's just 20. He can't shoot the three. It's like you have to actually like look. And I'm not saying I
Yep.
fully dove into all these guys. That's something I'm still doing and still trying to get a full evaluation of everyone. But it's like you got to put things in perspective. It's like you just can't look at the number, right? The number could be like can skew you away from liking a player. It's like no, well, understand age, who he's playing against. He's feel like I said, he's feeling himself. A lot
Yep.
of times I was saying like, oh, he's just he's in his bag. He's in his own world. So it's like once you get to the NBA. They'll tone it down. They'll you could do the ISO of course, but you're not gonna be able to the amount of ISOs he was getting. You're not gonna get that at the NBA. That's a fact. So
Yeah, not first coming in. But again,
no, no,
his shooting isn't his only thing. And I think sometimes what teams are going to fall almost too much in love is that he's got size and he has that ability to shoot. But I also love his playmaking ability. I mean, coming into a team where depending on the team that he's on in the lineup, he could be a good secondary, tertiary playmaker. And you have to have that in today's NBA. The days of having one guy orchestrate everything for your team
no,
long gone. So
nope,
you need forwards. We were just talking about this. We need forwards that have playmaking ability, and I think that's what Jovic can do. But some of the things that
exactly.
you touched on for areas of improvement, you know, we were not going to be expecting him to take guys off the dribble. But he has some instinct to use his body positioning. Again, you're going to hear me refer to a lot of players coming over internationally. Like a lot of these dudes, they use their bodies very well in terms of shielding and being able to finish. And that's what I think, uh, Jovic can do. But there's the question of defense. What position does he play on offense? I feel like that's easy, but
Yeah,
where does he defend? He's kind of one of these players. Is he strong enough to keep up with the bigs in the paint? And is he fast enough to keep up with the guys on the wing? So you kind of find yourself a little bit no man's land with him. But again, a lot of guys coming in today's NBA aren't lockdown defenders anymore. I mean, Matisse Thybulle, he's one guy out of a draft class where you just look at him and you say, okay, like that he's going to defend. A Davion Mitchell, that
exactly.
he's going to come in and
All NBA
defend.
defenders, like yeah, those guys are one and very rare. But he also he reminded me of like with Vren's Blindberg last year, kind of similar as far as body types, guys who could play make, guys who can great in open space, playmakers.
Hmm.
I don't think he'll fall. Like obviously, Vrenz didn't even get drafted, and
Yeah.
and there was kind of the similar things where there people were worried about who is he going to defend.
Hmm.
Strength obviously is always going to be a thing. But and I was really shocked Vrenz didn't get drafted last year because you know it's very similar to the Jovic, um, to Jovic, and as far as body types, playmaking, bags, that they both have solid handles. So I don't think that'll happen with Nikola. I think he's definitely going to get drafted, but I was they're very similar. You know, concerns about shot selection and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a big thing with Renz. But when I saw his shooting, obviously he played at two different, playing in Belgium, and playing Serbia. Belgium not the greatest, didn't have the greatest of league. Serbia a little bit better, but it's kind of similar. So I hope he doesn't fall. That doesn't happen to him. Where people like, oh, we don't trust the shot selection, and we don't think that's going to translate. Like Friends didn't even get a NBA invite, a summer league
Yeah.
invite, which is I still can't believe that. So hopefully, he'll get his way to the NBA. But hopefully, I don't think that'll happen with Joey. But they're kind of similar as far as playing style in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about a guy who went into the draft last year too now, and that's Yoko. Say it with me, Chris. Perkison. Roko
Perkison,
Perkison. There we go. There we go. So
Perkison,
Roko
Perkison.
Perkison, he came into the draft last year, and hey, man, Chris, there was a lot of dudes that were high on him coming into the draft
Yeah.
last
First round
season.
buzz. I know a lot of people had him in the first round.
Yeah, and now he withdrew, and he's coming back for this year. It looks like he's almost a sure thing to get into the draft this year. And there's a lot of buzz on him being a top 5 to 10 pick, depending on who
Mm-hmm.
you're asking, right? So Roko Perkison, I'm looking at him right now, an 18-year-old from Croatia. He's about 6'9", 230 pounds. It depends on where you're going for your information as to his exact height and weight, right? It's funny how that works. And Chris, I have him pegged as kind of a dual forward, almost like a perimeter creator.
Mm-hmm.
He's averaging this season 11 and a half points per game in his play for KK Sabonia basketball this year. Right now this year he's shooting about 53% from the floor, 44% from deep. Chris, he's giving you almost 6 rebounds per game and only about 2 turnovers in only 26 minutes per game. Chris, when I look at this guy, one of the biggest issues I had with him last season was, yeah, he's kind of a physically imposing guy. He's
Yeah.
he's big, he's strong, he gives good flashes, but my concern was what was his shot creation going to look like last year? This year, if you look at any film of the way he's playing now, he's answered those, which is
Yeah.
why I have him
He's
as a
off to a good.
top 5
He's
guy.
he's off to a really good start.
That shooting percentage definitely helps. When you're 6'9", you can shoot 40%,
Mm-hmm.
and you're strong. You can use your body very well to help you get any shot off that you want. His
Yep.
defensive abilities, I think, are a little bit more polished than some of these other prospects that we're going to be talking about. And he's still very young. Obviously, I just mentioned he's 18 years old. Again, shooting was a big question for me last year. Looks like he's answering it now. He's very aggressive in his desire to score. He has good vision when he wants to pass. It looks like he has good passing chops, although those assist numbers, again, just depending on the league and
Yeah.
how the coach is wanting to use him. Just because he doesn't have high assist numbers doesn't mean that passing ability is not there. He's just a really good finisher, as indicated by his 53% shooting from the floor. So, Chris, what are you thinking, man? Roko this season, you looking at him as a top 10, 5 pick? Where, like, just initially gut check feel, how do you think that he's going to finish the season?
I was as many were shocked that he pulled his name out. I thought he definitely should have been a first round pick at the end of the first round. People were hearing, maybe early second. So far he's made the right decision.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on pace to definitely be a lottery pick at worst, right? The way he's going, and like you said, 6'9", 230. Like we mentioned with the first few guys, playmaker, can do a lot of those stuff, like great in transition and all that. And he's going to be a good one. I was really shocked that he pulled out last year, because I'm like, he's going to make one of those bottom, that was one of those playoff teams at the end of the first round really happy.
Mm-hmm.
And he just bought himself a lot of a fatter check when he gets in, because he's off to a great start. What, shooting 52%? You said 40 plus from three. I mean, those are all things that people want to see for him improve on, and the strength is there. I mean, like we mentioned with a couple, like we mentioned with a lot of guys, his strength is not an issue. He has the size that you want, so. He definitely, it's so far made the right decision by pulling his name out and entering 2022. So he's he could even go higher. I mean, we talking about top 10 buzz. As the year goes by, we'll see how his season goes and his progresses. But so far, so good. Rocco definitely made the right decision so far.
Yeah, you can't knock him at all. And so, although he has improved, Chris, some of the things that I would like to see him improve upon even more, his decision making. And again,
Hmm.
young guys, you're going to knock them for their decision making.
Of
His
course.
turnovers need to be cleaned up a little bit. Playing in New Zealand this year ought to help his development. We just got done talking about how Hugo Besson is going to play in New Zealand. New Zealand is shaping up to be a very fertile ground for young NBA players. I mean, we've seen a number of guys already. You talk about LaMelo Ball, you're talking about, RJ Hampton, and now we've already gone through about three players in our top three so far
Hmm.
that we're going to be talking about. And the next one that we're going to be discussing is going to New Zealand as well. But I think that playing in New Zealand is going to help him out. His defense has been known to be a little lacking, but in the early going, it looks like he's showing effort there.
He's 18 years old too.
18
Like
years old, bro.
he's a baby. Like
18.
he's a baby. Like people forget he is a baby. And I think the defense will get better. He has the size to be a solid defender. The shooting, the two things we just mentioned, the defense and the perimeter shooting. So far, he's worked on those two things, and so far those things looking pretty good. Had a
Yeah.
good first game of the season. I think he had 24 and 6. He keeps continuing that he's going to keep rising up draft boards, and and even look smarter for pulling out of last year. So I think he's sky the whatever you want to call it, the graphs, I'm trying to find the word. I can't find the word. It's going up. Stock up.
Oh,
Everything. Stock is going.
his stock
I
market.
couldn't think of it. Yeah, the
Yeah,
stock
stock
market is
value.
going up with him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and hey, I had a little bit of a blunder myself. I was saying that he's going to New Zealand. Obviously, that's not the case. He's playing in Croatia for KK Sabonia. But the guy who I was looking at my notes, that's going to be the guy that we're talking about now,
Yeah.
Usman Dieng. And hey, man, there's a lot of people that are really high on him, and rightfully so. I mean, he's kind of a perimeter creator, Chris.
Mhm.
18 years old. He's French, going to be playing, yes, in New Zealand. I know that this one is the case, right? Not making a mistake here. But hey, man, 6'9", almost 200 pounds. I mean, what do you like about having a perimeter creator who's 6'9", who looks like he can improve on his stroke a little bit, but man, he's pretty athletic. He's pretty quick. He's long and has a really sound game. Chris, what do you like about Usman Dieng so far in the early going?
Smooth in transition, and with Hugo is going to be his teammate.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a very good combination. Has the size, like I said, what 6'9", 6'10",
Yep.
buck 90. Obviously, we all know got to work on getting stronger, but that will come. I'm not too worried about that. Needs to improve on obviously perimeter shooting and all that, but I think he's gonna be able to get a lot of pick and rolls with Hugo. They're gonna be able to. They should be able to do a lot of good things and all that. So I think he's another intriguing prospect that I think can also get up, rise up the boards, especially with Hugo there at the point. So he's definitely an intriguing prospect. Has this, like I said, 6'9". I mean, I feel like all these guys are like 6'9", and like that's. I think we're gonna
Except
like,
Hugo, man.
we
Hugo's
used
a
to, yeah,
shorty.
but like it feels like we're gonna be talking about guys. Oh, he's 6'6". Oh, he's short. The 6'9", the new 6'9" now, is the new 6'6". Well, if you was 6'6" back in the day, you're like, whoa, he's
Yep.
tall. I was like, no, you got to be 6'9" or above. I feel like all these wings and are 6'9" and above, and but he's definitely has a lot of tools. Obviously, outside perimeter shooting is going to be the biggest thing for him to work on, and so we'll see how that improves throughout the year. I think he's below 30% or something like that, but uh, we'll see how it goes. But I think pick and roll with Hugo is going to be something I want to see a lot. I want to see this year from those two guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about his efficiency. That's definitely an area of improvement for me. For when last year, when he was a 17-year-old playing professional basketball, Chris, he played for center. He played for Central
So
Federal
babies,
in
man, we're talking
France.
about babies, like
Babies,
crazy.
dude. I mean, it makes me sad how good these dudes are, and I'm in my 30s now.
Yeah, that's why
But hey,
I don't want to I don't want to harp on these, like, because you'll see people and they'll be like, well, this guy, like we mentioned before, he can't shoot, he can't do this. These guys are babies. These guys,
can't
and
yet.
they're gonna be coming from a different country,
Hmm.
and trying to adapt not just to the NBA game, but just coming to a different country.
Yeah.
That's a thing too. That's the thing that we don't. A lot of people don't put in perspective too. They got to learn maybe a language. It's a whole
Yeah.
different language barrier, money, everything, whole different lifestyle.
Got to
So
get their
those things
families
take a
set up.
while,
Yeah.
especially when you're 18, 18, 19 years old, and you're coming to the States sometimes by yourself, and
Yeah.
you may not have, that support system right away. So, that's why I don't like to trash, like some people you hear trash the international players and they just criticize them. Can't really do that. It's not really fair. I mean, you could give constructive criticism, hey, this guy, but to like really get. I've heard some
Hmm.
podcasts recently. I'm like, whoa, all right, that's a little excessive, but hey, whatever works for them, right?
Yeah, whatever works for them, but it doesn't work for us, man. So Ousmane Dieng averaged about 13 points per game in his play in France last year. The efficiency, Chris. I mean, 34% from the floor, about 27% from deep. Terrific rebounder. I mean, uses his size very well, about 5.5 rebounds per game. His turnovers, his decision making needs to be improved a little bit, about 3 turnovers per game in less than 30 minutes per game, man. So I
Yeah.
think going to New Zealand, playing with a guy like Hugo Besson, who's going to have the ball probably a little bit more than what Usman's used to, but he's, I think, playing alongside of a seasoned guard at the age of 20, a seasoned
Seasoned
guard
vet.
like, yep,
Seasoned vet.
he's seen
Yep.
it all, man. So Hugo Besson, I think, with the ball in his hands, is going to give Usman some of the cleanest looks that he's ever seen. And I think
Yep.
those two will be fun to watch. And that's going to be the New Zealand, their stocks on the rise too, if you talk about that. So we'll fast forward now to, man, everybody. I listen, love Chad Ford to death. Chad Ford has this player, Yannick Zosa,
Yeah.
one of his highest ranked players, if not his number one guy. And again, this is where height, it,
ESPN has him seventh right now.
dude, he's in everyone's like top 10 to 5 somewhere in that window. And Chris, I don't know how much you're used to 2K, but when you're given so much money and you're a creative player and you like try to make them taller, that takes away how much money or overall production or value you can give your guy based on his height. I think that's really applies in today's NBA because Yannick Zosa, although pretty raw considering how young he is and where his actual NBA level talent is already. The fact that he's 7 foot tall and 180 to 200 pounds, it really depends on where you're going for your information.
Mm-hmm.
17-year-old kid from Congo. I have him labeled as kind of this unicorn big, Alexei Pokashevsky almost, but as a defensive player. How Alexei was one of these guys where, oh, he's so creative on the offensive end, he's going to be so plug and play. He can play whatever position he can handle, he can pass or whatever. Yannick Zosa is like the defensive Alexei Pokashevsky. Everyone is
Yeah.
so high on this kid's ability to guard. You hear everyone say this guy can guard 1 through 5. That's what Yannick Zosa is being built as, is this 1 through 5 guy. Very athletic, very raw, fast, fluid. His lateral movement and his straight line movement,
He's a
very
gazelle.
freakish.
He's a gazelle, man. He is a gazelle.
I mean, just freakish athletic style of play. He already shows a pretty good understanding of angles and closeouts. That helps as a shot blocker and as a guy who he's going to be asked to switch a lot in today's NBA. And I think that that's what guys like esteemed analysts like Chad Ford look at with Yannick Zosa and have him slated so high because of how versatile on the defensive end that this kid's going to be. But Chris, offense, we know reigns supreme in basketball today, and that's the biggest question marks that I have. What are your thoughts about Yannick Zosa so far?
Like I mentioned, a gazelle, a guy who can feel like you can have 20 steps ahead of you, and somehow he's going to chase down block it. Like
Mm-hmm.
he blocks everything, but he is super like rawer than
Monday night.
raw there. Raw like JR used to say, tougher, whatever that saying JR used to say, raw than a 10-ounce, whatever that saying was.
Tougher than a 10-ounce steak.
10 and tougher than he is so
Or
raw.
$10 steak, excuse me.
$10 steak, but he's a big he's a baby. He's a newborn. Like I said, he's a gazelle, but he just goes off just instinct because he's still learning the game, and obviously offense is a work in progress, but he's 17. So let's also put that he is a baby. Having him, it's kind of similar to Usman Garuba last year too, because Usman Garuba was another guy who was super raw, not as raw offensively, because you saw some things. And Yannick, you see some things like as far as just the
Soft
form,
touch around the basket,
soft
things like
touch.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, things like that you see. But obviously, needs a ton of work with the offensive game. But defensively, I mean, you know, he had some strength, man. I mean, even if he doesn't ever develop the offensive game, he could come in and still, be a rim protector. He's going to be able to do that. Gets into the weight program. I mean, he can be a solid rim protector in this league, even if the offense never comes. But it's so hard to really figure him out because he's so young and like it's all projection for him. If the offense comes, you might might be Giannis for all we know. You know, so but how do you project that? He's really tough. Like I said, um, seen him as high as seventh,
Mm-hmm.
seen him as low as in the second round. So he
Dude,
has
Chad
a
Ford has him higher than 7. I'm just saying, man,
yeah.
and I love Chad Ford to death. It's the offense that has me scared, man. It's genuinely
It's
his
it's
defense is there. Not only that, Chris, but you touched on the strength aspect of it. I mean, I've seen places have him listed at 180 pounds. I've also seen places have him listed at like upwards of 220. So if you just average that out, just shoot down the dice. I mean, 200 pounds is he? You're not going to be asking him to guard, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. Not that really
the,
many people can,
yeah.
but
On
still,
one
like,
side, I had seen 172, and I'm like,
geez.
whoa. I mean, he needs to eat some, get some
Some
Wendy's in
spinach,
him,
bro.
or some, yeah, he needs to eat some fast food. Hey, but once you get to the States, man, we got all the fast food in the world. You get him some
Hey, New
hamburgers.
Orleans, New Orleans.
Hey,
There's your
hey, you
guy.
see with Zion, Zion, looking plumpy. So hey, maybe you need to go to New Orleans and get that gumbo. But that's the thing. He's such an enigma right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone is infatuated. But same thing like Garuba. And I really like Garuba last year, but I felt like he was raw offensively, but not to this level. Like I
Yeah.
felt like the offensive, his offense was especially around the rim. I like this touch. I think that shooting could eventually be like he reminded me of Ibaka, like Ibaka coming out. We all remember Ibaka just being a shot blocker, right?
Yep.
And eventually, but he always had the form, the technique to down the line be a good shooter, right? Everyone projected he could be a good shooter, and now what do you know Ibaka for? Right, being a kind of a
Stand
3-and-D
still.
guy, right?
Yep.
A corner three guy, that shoots at a nice clip, and I think that with Garuba, that could be his potential. Yannick, I don't know. It's
It's
Steven.
tough to
It's just
measure, man.
it's still early. Like I mentioned, he's 17 years old.
Yeah.
Like
That's the thing.
I
He may
don't
not
know.
get drafted this year. He may decide, hey, if I withdraw and work on some things, maybe I can pull, a
I,
Rocco Perkison. I
I
mean,
mean, if he's getting if they're telling him he's top 10, I
that's
could
a
see
lot of
him. But
money.
it's a lot of it's a lot to turn down. But I would with the way the basketball world is shaping up now, where you got
Mm-hmm.
all these different avenues to make money. You don't have to go right to the pros. Like you can go to college and name, image, and likeness, and go to the G League, go to the overtime
Yep.
and make money and develop. We'll see, but he's definitely interesting. Definitely one of the most unique prospects in this draft.
Yep, another unicorn big, and it feels like we at least have one of those a year. Not to mention that we're going to have, when we start talking about these domestic players like a Chet Holmgren, there's another unicorn in this
Another
draft
one, man.
too. And that's going to be a fun podcast when we finally decide that we're done being unique and conforming to mainstream draft talk, right? So,
Chet Pod's going to be fun.
Chet Pod on the low. All right, so we'll transition from one big right to another. We have Khalifa Diop coming in. 19-year-old player from Senegal. He's 6'11", about 230 pounds, a little bit more beefier than the aforementioned Zosa, but kind of a traditional center in a sense. If I could coin a phrase, a modern traditional big.
Mm-hmm.
Shades. I'm not going to say he is Joel Embiid, but a little bit of Joel Embiid in his game. He's surprisingly fluid, solid post moves, and has a slight ability to take a couple dribbles, Chris, and make a good decision. A little bit of passing abilities as well. He runs well. And again, he has the potential to rise, I think, on a lot of people's draft boards, because I think that you're going to see the player comp the most is like a light Joel Embiid. He's
Hmm.
averaging this season so far 7.2 points per game for Grand Carnia, shooting 55% from the floor, about 4 rebounds, and in only 16 minutes per game, Chris. So when you hear about those low minutes, is that kind of a concern for you for a young big, or do you think that that's just style of play difference?
That's just style play. I mean, we see that a lot with the international guys. They're not playing a lot of minutes. It doesn't really mean anything, you know. I know some people get concerned when they see, oh, what this guy like not playing a lot of minutes, but that's just how the international game works. They don't really play young guys like that, you know. And we all know bigs take a little bit longer to develop, so I'm not really concerned about the minutes being played. You see whatever minutes he is getting, you see what he can get, and he's kind of an old school type of big, you know, back to the basket type. Is he related to Sagana Job? Is that his brother?
See, I looked a little bit for that, but Jana Jop, I'm familiar with that name too. And then we have Keita Bates Jop playing for the San Antonio Spurs this year. So it's funny, I'm
I
not
don't think they're
sure.
related. I'm seeing now because I've been trying to figure out because you know Diop then they're kind of similar, you know,
Yeah.
type of bigs and all that. And I'm like, are they related? But I haven't seen anything. But maybe I thought you do if they were related in some way. But I
I
don't think
never
that.
found anything saying that they were, and I feel like, in doing my research that would have been one of the first things to pop up if they were, but I didn't want to flat out deny it. But
Yeah.
you talk about him being a traditional big, and I agree with you in the aspect that he's not going to be one of these dudes that's going to step out and shoot. But
Hmm.
again, I think that he has a little bit of wiggle in his game. I think that he has, that lateral movement that a lot of kind of modern bigs do. Again, like if I have to compare him to anybody, it's just like a kind of like a tiny little baby Joel Embiid. He's not as polished as Embiid was coming out of Kansas or anything like that, but I do see a little bit of playmaking. I do see a little bit of dribbling, and he's very smooth around the basket. And the only other player in the NBA that plays like that, really, my man, is Joel Embiid. So I'm
Hmm.
sorry for such a high level of comparison. I really don't like to do that, but there's not a lot of dudes in today's NBA that have the type of play that Khalifa Diop emulates, other than a Joel Embiid to me, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. He's like I said, definitely has a little bit more wiggle in his game. You know, is a solid athlete and all that. You know, good around the rim. You know, another guy I'm gonna try to see if I can get some more intel on and watch him more because you know I've been seeing his name around for the last few years. So
Hmm.
I'm a little bit in last year's draft cycle. You know, people mention him, but definitely someone I'm definitely gonna try to get some more intel on and see how he progresses throughout the season.
Yeah, and I'm really infatuated by his game. A couple things that I think that he needs to work on is his shot blocking timing. I think that he can kind of be sold a little bit too easy on a pump fake,
Yeah.
and the minutes do concern me a little bit, Chris.
Hmm.
I don't know how well how conditioned he'll be coming into the NBA. But again, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm not super familiar with Grand Carnia, just to be completely honest. But when I watch
Hmm.
the film, there's a lot that I really like, and I do think that he has the ability to improve over the year and eventually get drafted, my man. So we'll move on from Khalifa and we'll talk about Gabriel Procida. All right, the Italian wing right here. I hope I did his name right. 19-year-old kid from
Better than I
Italy.
could do. Definitely better than I could
Gabriele
do.
Procida. All right. So 6'7", 200 pounds, kind of a combo forward of sorts. I think he can give you kind of that 2 through 4 range, depending on the lineup and the team that he's on. Last year, Chris, he averaged about 6 points per game, playing for Bernardo. Last year, shot 44% from the floor, about 39% from deep, 2.5 rebounds per game, and less than a turnover in about 16 minutes per game, my man. So efficiency looks good. I think the shot's going to be his calling card. Talk to me about what you've seen from Gabriele Procida.
I haven't watched much of him, to be honest. I haven't watched much of him, so he's definitely one of those guys that I definitely need to watch more film of.
Little
But
great white buffalo type thing.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, the name, you said the name better than I could right now, so that's another thing I gotta work on with Gabriella.
You got to hold the
The
hands too, like you're
yeah, yeah,
you're
with the
pinching
Gabriella,
something. Gabriella.
Gabriella, but just looking at just basically just looking straight off his numbers and all that. I mean, can shoot the ball, from deep well, good 3-point shooter, has the size to 6'7", 200, you know. So, but like I said, haven't done a lot of don't have a lot of intel on him right now, but that's definitely another guy that I definitely need to keep my eye on and see how he does and how he progresses.
Yeah, and he's flirted with coming over to the States too in the NBA with Drew. The last few guys that we're going to be talking about are kind of these guys that looked like they were going to get a shot in the draft for last year and
Yeah, yeah.
withdrew their
Because
name.
a lot of guys, once the
Yep.
NLL and all that that came out, and like bunch of guys pulled out, and especially a lot of
Yep.
international guys, pulled out too. So I've heard of him, but just haven't dove into him. But that's definitely someone I'm going to be diving into a lot and see
I
what I can
think
get out of.
I think people are going to like looking at his film a lot. Now, efficiency to me is a bit of a problem so far in the 3 games that I've seen that he's played this year. He only shot about 25% from the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, that's coming back into the swing of things, maybe playing with some new teammates, things of that nature. I think
Yeah,
over time he'll look a little bit better. It's really hard to get worse than 25% from the floor, to be perfectly honest with you, Chris. But I
exactly.
think,
Yeah.
if you look at what he did last year, 39% from deep. I don't see in looking at his shot, his mechanics are clean. He actually prefers to shoot more so than anything else, right? And that's another thing. Does he settle too much? What does he
Mm-hmm.
look like when he puts the ball on the floor? Can he be a little bit more aggressive in his game? Can he pump fake, give you 2 dribbles, and make a good clean pass? That's very valuable for your perimeter players in today's NBA. If you're looking for them to show any type of playmaking at all. Now, Chris, the next guy that we're going to be talking about, we talked about a Nikola Jovic. All right. So how about this? We have a Tristan Vukovic.
Vucevic, not
Vukovic,
Vucevic, like
not
with the C.
Vucevic. Yeah, with a
Vukovic.
K, with a K now.
Hey,
So we got an 18-year-old, another Serb, from
another
Serbia,
Serbia, another
7 foot,
Serbia.
230 pounds. This is a stretch big, Chris. This is kind of like your Mehmet Okors, if you will, who
Oh man,
played at Utah once upon a time. He averaged 3 points per game last year for Real Madrid. That's a really tough club for a young
yeah,
guy
that's
to
Spanish.
get any minutes in. But 38% from deep, Chris, and in 1 rebound per game in about 9 minutes, right? So most of his shooting came from deep. Shot 41% overall, 38% from deep. So you look at these guys and you're like, okay, but man, pick and pop. That's going to be his calling card. And we've seen guys like Davies Bertans make a pretty penny
Mm-hmm.
for just being tall and he can hit a 3. And Chris, I don't know if you've watched much film on him, but when I look, he has range to go with that accuracy too. He's not just one of these guys where, his foot's on like he has a toe on the line. He has some deep ball game, shows flashes of some passing, which is very important. Again, if you can pump fake and take a dribble and find a cutter, that's very valuable in today's NBA. And despite his weaknesses, I think the shooting makes him dangerous, but it's going to be team dependent. So, what do you think about Tristan Vucevic?
Yeah, Vukovic,
Vukovic.
Vukovic. Another guy I haven't watched a lot of stuff on, very very little, and like you said, has a size, right? So you would
Yeah.
think he'd be a more of a brute down low, but he's more of like like you said, a Mehmet Okur, guy who can, can shoot it a little bit, because you just look at his number. Because if you just look at his size and then you
Yep.
see his shooting percentage, you're like, that doesn't make sense. So, just basing it off that, you're like, okay, he's definitely, shooting the ball maybe a little bit more. So can he be physical? Can we get some more physicality out of him? Because he is 7 foot, 230 pounds. I mean, he's got some
Yes.
size to him. So can we get him, working in the post a little bit more and see what he could do? Even if he has a face up game, I'm not saying he needs to be a back to the back type of player, but get a little face up game. Maybe I think he's hovering around the perimeter a little bit too much just from what I see. But definitely another guy gonna have to see how he does because he has all the tools to be good. Like you said, pick a pop, he could be deadly with that. Has some playmaking, but 1 rebound a game. I know it's just 8 minutes. I know it's just
Yep.
8 minutes,
It's
but
just 8 minutes. It's hard to play in
seven.
Real Madrid for a baby,
I,
man. It's
and
really
I know
hard.
it's a tough league. It's a tough league, Real Madrid. But I need more than 1 rebound a game, buddy. I know it's 8 minutes. I know you're playing 9, 10 minutes a game, but like I said, just physicality. I need him to be a little more, a little bit more aggressive. Getting all that because you has the size. So another guy I need to be going to have my eye on watching a lot more of him. But the Serbs keep producing guys, man.
Yep, the Serbs are strong, man. So, all right, we're going to move on to a player that I know you've heard of because this guy has been involved in the last couple of draft classes, and we've been hearing his name a lot. And that's Malcolm Caslin. 20-year-old
Mm-hmm.
player from France. He's a big guy. He reminds me a little bit of your Alec Burkses, players like that. 6'6", about 200 pounds, bit of a perimeter creator.
That might be
He's
the perfect comp,
it
Alec
might be
Burks. It
it
might
might
be
be
streaky as hell, just like Alex Burks.
super streaky. How about for this year so far, Chris? He's averaging 10 points per game, playing for KK Mega Baymax this year, shooting 44% from the floor, 41% from deep, giving you almost 3 rebounds per game. Now his turnover or his assists per game are at 3.8, turnovers are at 2. So not your ideal,
Yeah.
turnover to assist ratio, but
Not
still
a
not bad.
playmaker.
It's not bad. He does give a little bit of playmaking. And how about this, Chris? His shooting has literally gone up. His efficiency from deep has gone up every single season that he's played professional basketball. He's a very capable athlete. He's not like you. Not everyone could be De'Aaron Fox, or Kira Lewis Jr. and just be a burner on the floor. But he's still a very capable NBA athlete. Good shooting, finishing ability, can finish with either hand, can create for himself and others, and again, that size 6'6" gives you a little bit of that versatility to maybe play the 1 through 3. Chris, I'm really feeling Malcolm Caslin this year, and I think that he could be a guy that rises up as the season goes along. So, what do you think about? He's 20 years old now, so he's a grandpa. But what do
He's
you what,
old.
what do you think
Yeah, I
about?
don't know. I don't know. He's too old. Oklahoma City would take him off their board because he's too old. Um, no, but he's someone that we've seen the draft cycle before.
Hmm.
Has the nice size. Can, like you said, could probably play two. Multiple positions.
Yep.
Has, like you said, improved as a shooter. Can create in the perimeter. Just has a lot of things you like I said, streaky, obviously,
Yep.
but he has improved. So that's something. Like I said, solid playmaker. Even though assist to turnover ratio is a little low, but I think you know asked a lot to handle the ball. So maybe at the next level won't be able to won't do as much with the ball in his
Sure.
hands. So that the turnovers and all that, but definitely someone that definitely going to be rising up. I've seen him kind of in that second round range.
Yep.
And I think he could possibly creep up to the first round. Obviously with a good season and all that. And so far he's off to a good start. So I think we'll be seeing his name rise up more in the draft boards because he has good size for a perimeter player, 6 foot, 200 plus pounds. So and is shooting the ball great from three, and 3 and D guys, potentially he could that could be him. So definitely rising up for sure. So it's enough, definitely another guy on my. I need to watch more of him and see how he progresses.
Yeah, and just how much wiggle does he have to his game? Can he break down a defender, in
Yeah,
isolation? Things like that you have to look at. And he's not as young. He's 20,
playing under control too. Playing on
playing
and
under
like you
control.
mentioned before, you had
Hmm.
the perfect comp, and then I don't know if you did that on accident. Alex Burke is to me is when you said that name, I immediately thought Alex Burke watching his game, and then I'm like, okay, they're very similar type. I think same size too.
Yeah, about
Maybe he's
six
a little.
six. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he may be a little taller than Burks. Burks may be 6'4", 6'5", but kind of similar games.
Yeah.
A very similar streaky style, but when they get hot, they can get hot, and I think that's what we could see from Malcolm is when he gets hot, he could light it up. But it's just that consistency and all that, and and Burks sometimes can as in the playoffs last year, Burks took over, so and I
Yeah.
think we could see that from Malcolm where you could have those, as he gets progresses in his NBA career, you could see some of those Alex Burke type flashes where and play make a little bit. So intriguing, definitely an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've seen how countryman, Teo Maladon has kind of grown a little bit in Oklahoma City. Again, fellow Frenchman, big, highly endorsed by Tony Parker. I think Malcolm Caslin is going to be one of these players that's going to improve over the season, as he has literally every other year that he's been a professional in France. I think this year is going to be the year, Chris, where we see him come over stateside, and I think a team's going to give him a really good shot to earn some minutes this year. But as we move forward, in the season. So we will with the last player that we're going to talk about today, that being Mojave King. Now, he's a 19-year-old player from New Zealand. 6'5", 200 pounds. Another one of these perimeter creators. Now he's from New Zealand, but he's not playing for the Breakers. He's playing for Adelaide this year. So it's a shame that we're not going to see that three-headed monster that could have been with Hugo Dieng and Mojave. But a player last year, Chris, averaged 6 points per game, shot about 39% from the floor, only about 33% from deep, 2.5 rebounds per game, less than a turnover per game, in about 17 minutes. Chris, as I look at this player, man, I see someone who's very active even without the ball. He's a very crafty offensive rebounder, which I think his hustle is going to help him out a lot when he's being evaluated. Has active hands on defense, could be a good help defender. I don't know if he's ever really going to develop into like a ball stopper, but I think that he can conform to a defensive scheme pretty well. And dribble, pass, shoot. Again, 33% isn't that high, but again, 18-year-old player last season. This year, a little bit more seasoned, playing for a little bit better team, I figure. And moving forward, Chris, how do you like Mojave?
I haven't watched, not gonna lie, I haven't watched a lot of film on him, so he's definitely another one of those guys I need to watch more. But I don't have too much intel on him. So, but like I said, definitely a guy I'm gonna keep my eye on and see what he can do. Has some nice size, so 6'5", 200 pounds. So play some off guard, off ball guard. So gonna see, we'll see how he does. So another guy I'm gonna definitely have my eye on. There's so many guys, so many international guys that I have on my list of guys I need to just somehow grab some film and watch. But he's definitely on the top of that list.
Yeah, and we're gonna, obviously we're not just an international, analysis for NBA draft and things like that, but it's good to kind of dive in and talk about these guys preseason. And again, it's really hard to get film on these guys, but to me, it's more fruitful to have conversations about what little film we have on them as opposed to talking about high school film for these domestic players, right? So, Chris, that's really it for today's show, man. Just want to thank everyone so much for watching live. If you
Yes, sir.
did, if you're listening to us, obviously it's a pleasure. It's a treat as always. Please, if you got friends, family, people who you talk NBA draft with, hopefully, you found your next new favorite NBA draft analyst show. And we have some great guests lined up in the coming weeks. Chris, we got our buddy Tyler Rucker from the Backcourt Violation is going to be
I'm
joining
excited for
us
that one. I'm
next week.
excited for
First time
Tyler.
working with him. I've been following him on Twitter for quite some time, and can't wait to do some work with him. And then the following week,
His
Chris,
draft guide, the draft guide they had, it was absolutely tremendous. That draft guide they put out. I mean, it's so in depth, and it was just they made it simple too,
yep,
where it was easy to read for whoever. If you weren't familiar with it, it wasn't too complicated. Some of these draft guides they get too complicated. They made it super
they try to be
easy.
the smartest guy in the room and
Yeah,
things
no, they
like
made
that.
it
Yeah,
simple. They're like, hey, player A needs to work on this,
yep.
and they tremendous. And they got me. I'm a customer for life, so they do great work. So I'm really excited to have Tyler on the show.
Yeah, and Tyler does great work. He's been one of these guys, man, that I've kind of been targeting on social media because
Yeah,
he's friends
yeah.
with a lot of our friends, man, and I haven't got
Yeah,
to do any work
he's
with
in
him
that
yet.
draft circle. Yeah, he's in that draft circle that feels like everyone that we've worked with and interact with throughout these draft cycles. So
It was only a
happy to
matter of
have him
time
on.
before the world got small enough before we had Tyler on the show. And then
Yeah.
speaking of other friends that I've been dying to do any sort of work with, our buddy Albert from the Draft Act podcast, we
And they just did it. I think they just did a show with Tyler. So like
they're
and
releasing
that was a
some
great show.
sort of crazy thing between,
Yeah.
our buddy Nathan from Draft Deeper, our guy Corey and Albert from the Draft Act, and then Tyler from Backcourt Violation. They all have this crazy, in 48. It's like the countdown for when Jericho joined, WWF, when it was just like a countdown and we had no idea what was going on. That's what
Yep.
these guys are up to right now. So stand by for that. But our buddy Albert from the Draft Act podcast, I haven't done any work with him personally. I know Corey has been a frequent, guest on both of our shows before we've, decided to throw Draft Capital together. But we're gonna have Albert on Draft Capital before Corey, and I can't wait to do some work with our buddy Albert from Draft Capital, or excuse me, from Draft Tech here on Draft Capital. But Chris, man, as always, and by the way, it's so good to see you and hear you for the first time in quite some time since I've been back from deployment, man. So thank you for co-hosting the show with me. Let's let the folks know where they can find you and your work.
Man, always a pleasure to chop it up with you, talking international prospects. We're gonna have so many great shows lined up, so I'm super excited to get dive back into the draft scene and then chopping up with you. So happy you're back again. So, but yeah, you can find me off the ball pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Make sure you follow all the guys at Off the Ball Network. So, like I said, it's a pleasure, and can't wait for next show.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for myself, you can follow me at Stephen G Hoops on Twitter. You can follow Draft Capital at Draft Capital NBA on any social media outlet. And anywhere that you're getting your podcast from for Draft Capital is going to be one of your new favorite draft analysis shows out there. And don't go too far, because here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, if you're watching, listening live, we're going to be hosting Full Court Fridays on Twitter Spaces and Off the Ball Network
Mhm.
exclusive, where you're going to get good NBA content at large. A lot of the hoop heads from Off the Ball Network are going to be there. But we won't delay anybody else any longer. Just thank you everyone so much for tuning in, for listening to Draft Capital. For my co-host Chris LeBron, for myself Stephen Gillespie, repping Off the Ball Network to the fullest. This has been Draft Capital, and we'll catch up with y'all next time. Much love, everybody.